the much-awaited testimony of Robert Mueller takes place this week. He had two, hearings. One was in front of the House Judiciary Committee. The other was in front of the House Intelligence Committee hearing. Both they were unique in some respects. They were unique insofar as the questions that were asked and the emphasis, and obviously unique in terms of the personnel, both in terms of Democrats and Republicans. There was a little overlap. Before we go through sort of some of the major points, what was your overall impression?
My impression from the day before to watching it to the day after never really changed. And it was pretty much, why are we doing this? Mueller had told us back in, I guess it was May, the end of May, when he did his press conference, that, listen, if you call me to testify, I'm not going to say anything that's not in that report. It's all available for you right there. You can read it right now if you want. There was massive election interference. You need to do something about it. Other than that, I'm done, so you shouldn't even call me to testify. And that's what he delivered yesterday. Absolutely, 206 different times where he said, read the report, look at the report. I'm not going to answer that, just read the report. And the weirdness of not wanting to read from his own report. But again, his staff had actually announced prior to the hearings that he was not going to read from his own report. The whole thing was very weird. There were some, bright spots during the hearing, but, I think it basically played out how a lot of us just thought it was going to play out, which was we're going to stay glued to this and we're not really going to find out anything too new from it. And I don't feel like we did.
Well, I got to disagree with you a little bit, Farron. I mean, I think for the most part, everybody anticipated that we weren't going to get much by way of new information. I think the reason to do it is because people don't pay attention. I don't know if even people paid that much attention to the actual testimony, to be honest with you, but certainly the huge number of people who have not read the report. And we got to remember, too, that Bill Barr had 2 weeks to essentially lie to the American public as to the question as to whether or not the report exonerated Donald Trump. And I think in addition to getting more nuance and detail on the dynamic surrounding the Trump's culpability when it comes to obstruction, I actually thought there was one very important point that came out in the context of the questioning during the Intel committee, and that was with when he was being questioned. Mueller was by New York Congressman Sean Maloney, not necessarily one of my favorite Congresspeople. Nevertheless, his question was, why didn't you get testimony from Donald Trump? Why did you decide not to subpoena Donald Trump? Well, first off, Mueller said that he didn't want to subpoena Donald Trump because it would have been tied up in the courts for over a year or more, and there was pressure for him to finish the report. Now, of course, everyone would have been aware of the fact that Donald Trump was fighting a subpoena, and the pressure would not have been on him to finish the report. It would have become Donald Trump's responsibility. But the reason why he went forward at that point was fascinating, because he said it's a balancing test between what we anticipate we could get from hearing from the testimony of Donald Trump, which he had said earlier and in the report was paramount to understanding what went down and to discussing obstruction, versus weighed against how much existing evidence was already there to make the case that Donald Trump had obstructed. And that was, in my mind, the most explicit thing that Mueller said in terms of not just that they didn't bring charges against Donald Trump because of the OLC memo, which was one tract in which we sort of divine that was what Mueller was telling us. But the other tract is that he felt he did not, that the weighing against the time on pursuing a subpoena against a sitting president versus the case that they had already made in his mind that the president had committed obstruction, that the latter actually won out. I think that's hugely important. It seems to me it's been completely overlooked, at least in the popular media. And look, this is it's stunning, but Donald Trump has managed to normalize total lawbreaking in the context of his presidency. Never mind that we will not know the full story when it comes to collusion or conspiracy, for that matter, because of his obstruction. But the president clearly committed multiple offenses of obstruction of justice. And we know, frankly, that he's also committed multiple other offenses of corruption, all of which would have a place in the context of an impeachment inquiry. And so I think certainly in terms of the fireworks that people wanted, in terms of the drama that people wanted, you're right, Robert Mueller was dogged in his refusal to provide that. I wonder, frankly, people have speculated that he's lost a step or two or five, frankly, after watching that performance. I also wondered to what extent that performance was somewhat premeditated insofar as he did not want to answer specific questions. I mean, it was interesting to me that he had his lawyer sworn in for the intelligence hearing, but not for the Judiciary Committee hearing. And when we come back, let's talk about the possibilities there. It seems that the Judiciary Committee was obviously looking, and to my mind, the Democrats were too singular in looking after obstruction. In the second hearing, the intelligence hearing, we were hearing more about what Russia actually did, according to our intelligence services, to interfere with the election. And I wonder if he felt more comfortable in that territory. But we will talk about some specific moments when we get back. I'm Sam Seder, talking with the great Farron Cousins. This is Ring of Fire Radio.